Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after a very unfortunate accident, he dies in his previous life. He gets reborn into Naruto, which is one of the big three. Inside of Naruto, he decides to deceive the entire ninja world.
Chapter 1. Such a night should be utterly silent. Chapter 1. Such a night should be utterly silent, seeking monthly votes. Tonight, the night in Konoha is exceptionally dark, as if it were soaked in ink. In the thick darkness of the Death Forest, outside the stone cave embedded in the fault line of the slope, the shadows of snakes meandered through the bushes. Hiss, hiss. Seemingly sensing something, the snakes raised their heads slightly to look around, spitting out their blood-red tongues. In the distance, several masked black figures appeared silently in the trees, like owls, without alerting the snake swarm. Is it right here? At the head, Hiruzen Sarutobi, clad in light armor, stood on a tree with a somber expression, gazing at the bottomless cave in the distance, his mutterings heavy and complex. Disperse, Hiruzen Sarutobi said in a deep voice. Swish, swish. The black shadow behind it instantly split into smaller parts and scattered in all directions, spreading out like large black wings, covering the entire area with sharp beaks and claws. This is the Special Forces unit known for its assassination tactics, which are highly efficient, ruthless, and shrewd. Recently, many Genin, Chunin, and even Ambu ninjas have mysteriously disappeared from Konoha. It should be noted that ninjas who can join the Ambu are at least Chunin with a special skill, and they are considered pillars of the village even in Konoha. Even with Danzo Shimura's cover-up in the shadows, it was impossible to completely erase all traces. What angered and puzzled Danzo Shimura even more was that a senior member of the Hyuga clan had died today, and the director of Konoha Hospital had suddenly disappeared right before his eyes. Has Orochimaru gone mad? This matter finally alarmed Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was busy dealing with the border conflict in the Land of Fire, and he immediately thought of the unusual news about Orochimaru's actions some time ago. Orochimaru. After a moment of silence, Hiruzen Sarutobi and the two Ambu members disappeared, leaving behind only a sigh that sounded like a mixture of disappointment and regret. Meanwhile, underground beneath the cave lies a complex, damp, and cold drainage system. Tick-tock, tick-tock. All that could be heard was the sound of sewage dripping into the puddles and creating ripples. However, within a vast, dark space, it has been transformed into a secret experimental base. No matter how many times I see it, I am always amazed by the exquisite and wondrous nature of this body. Looking at the lifeless, intact corpse on the operating table, Orochimaru's desire and greed were almost overflowing. He had traveled to various parts of the ninja world and had seen many well-preserved ancient corpses, but they were either crooked skulls with bulging eyes or swollen limbs that tore through their clothes. But the corpse in front of me was completely different. Its appearance was so exquisite that it seemed otherworldly. Its skin was fair, and its hair was dark and lustrous. Even its eyelashes hadn't fallen out. Its eyes were closed as if it had just entered a dream. However, the withered torso showed signs of dehydration, and the muscles in the limbs had atrophied. Orochimaru was certain that the boy was dead, but the body somehow retained a certain degree of vitality. Orochimaru felt as if his soul had broken free of its restraints, leaving only an empty shell of a body. So this is the Otsutsuki clan. Orochimaru's chest rose and fell slightly as he licked his dry lips with the tip of his tongue. After all, the Hyuga clan is a powerful race that created chakra and ninjutsu, as recorded in their ancient texts. It's normal for them to possess strong vitality and a powerful soul. However, even the Otsutsuki clan shed bright red blood, not the bodily fluids of noble gods. According to his speculation, if he could transplant all the organs of this body, he could even transform his own physique and bloodline. possessing incredibly powerful ninjutsu talent and vitality. This kind of surgery can only be performed by someone who is skilled in organ and cell transplantation techniques. Even Tsunade cannot do it. It seemed as if it was prepared especially for him. Thinking of this, Orochimaru looked at the figure on another operating table beside him and met a pair of white eyes that seemed to tremble with fear and an old face with a look of shock and anger. The former was a boy of only 15 years old who happened to be close in age to the corpse. His long, black, silk-like hair was draped down, and his youthful face was pale and taut. The swastika-shaped curse mark on his forehead was particularly striking. In the entire Hidden Leaf Village, and even the entire ninja world, only the Hyuga clan possesses such pure white, snow-like eyes, and only members of the branch family are afflicted with the ugly caged bird seal. Hinata Kumikawa. That's the boy's name. The corpse of this member of the Otsutsuki clan, as well as the ancient book that records the ancient secrets of the Hyuga clan, were both offered to him voluntarily by Hyuga Kumikawa. According to the secrets recorded in ancient books, the Hyuga clan is a direct descendant of the Otsutsuki clan, so the transplant would likely have the best results and would not easily cause rejection or various complications. Yun Chuan, now only the heart is left. Are you ready? Orochimaru wore a gentle, feminine smile, deliberately omitting the surname and honorifics and addressing him by his first name. This kind of address usually indicates a close relationship or a significant difference in rank, but it clearly shows that the two people are not very close. It's an arrogant statement that everything you have belongs to me. The same is true. Once the organ transplant surgery is completely completed, Orochimaru will place a cursed seal on him, quickly develop the ninjutsu of soul transference, find a way to break the caged bird, cursed seal, and finally seize this perfect body. Orochimaru wasn't worried that things would get out of his control. He was just a 15 or 16-year-old kid, and besides, he was considered trash by the Hyuga clan. Lord Orochimaru, please make your move. Hinata Kumikawa's expression was filled with fear, but his tone was extremely firm. His eyes, looking at Orochimaru, were full of admiration and gratitude. You killed that old man and avenged my parents. I am willing to offer you this body that I cannot control. Upon hearing this, Orochimaru smiled. It had indeed taken him a lot of effort to infiltrate the Hyuga clan's territory and kill a senior elder. He figured his good teacher should have discovered by now that it was him who did it. There was no other way. He not only needed to perform the surgery perfectly, but also to use the life-sustaining sealing technique. He had to concentrate all his energy and had no spare strength to manipulate illusions. The recipient could only remain conscious. Therefore, the only option is to grant Hinata Kumikawa's request and kill the head elder of the main family who forced his parents to their deaths, so that he will cooperate willingly. It didn't matter. He was already fed up with everything in Konoha. As long as he could obtain the secrets of the Otsutsuki clan, even defection would be worthwhile. Lord Orochimaru, what do you intend to do? The person who spoke was another elderly man in a white coat, who was also the missing director of Konoha Hospital. In fact, he was a medical talent trained by Danzo, codenamed Owl. At this moment, the owl's gaze towards Orochimaru was filled with fear, in addition to shock and anger. Orochimaru completely ignored him, figuring the old man would obey anyway. With this thought in mind, Orochimaru cleared his mind of all distractions, and after confirming that everything was ready, activated the complex sealing technique beneath his feet. Black jutsu patterns covered Hyuga Kumikawa's body, binding it while supplying him with chakra and simultaneously activating the established external blood circulation device, with tubes inserted into the aorta and superior and inferior vena cava. Now, Hinata Kumikawa's kidneys, liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and other organs have been replaced by the internal organs of that Otsutsuki clan corpse, leaving only his most important and dangerous heart. Puff! Orochimaru conjured a chakra scalpel in his hand, the tip of which traced along Hyuga Kumakawa's bones and flesh, revealing blood-red internal organs through the opened chest cavity. He then focused intently on cutting off the fresh heart, leaving only part of the posterior wall of the left atrium and the tissue of the right atrium. Turning his head, Orochimaru removed the Otsutsuki heart from the corpse. Looking at the heart, which was calm yet still blood-red, Orochimaru held it up with almost pious movements, but his actions did not cause the slightest ripple. The heart belonging to the Otsutsuki clan was placed into Hyuga Kumakawa's body at this moment. "You actually want a heart transplant?" the owl, who had been silent all along, suddenly asked in a trembling voice. "You think the two of us can handle this?" "I think you can," Orochimaru said coldly, looking up at the old man. "Because if you can't, what's coming next might get a bit bloody. What do you think?" The owl's old, loose face twitched slightly, but it still obediently stood in front of the operating table. Orochimaru began suturing the blood vessels. His methods were extremely primitive and insane. If even one blood vessel malfunctioned, the recipient would be on the verge of death. However, under the meticulous manipulation of Orochimaru and the other man, a large amount of chakra surged into Hyuga Kumakawa's body, continuously providing him with strong life force, which was like a miracle keeping him alive. Time passed, second by second, and Orochimaru's accumulated chakra gradually depleted. Fortunately, the blood vessels have begun to heal, and even the cross-shaped incision on the chest cavity is gradually healing under the power of the palm immortal technique. Only one last step remains. I will dispel the life-sustaining barrier. Because of excessive chakra consumption, Owl could barely stand. Orochimaru's already pale face turned deathly white as he stared intently at Hyuga Kumakawa's body and whispered, "Kumakawa, don't disappoint me." Whether it can succeed now depends on whether Hinata Kumakawa can withstand this power. The power of the Otsutsuki clan. Boom! A deep, resonant heartbeat, like the beat of a war drum, echoed throughout. Veins bulged up Hinata Kumakawa's body, like the dense veins of a leaf, slightly protruding and bluish. On the instruments, the vital signs that had lost external support immediately showed violent fluctuations. Ah! Even though Hinata Kumakawa had mentally prepared himself, the excruciating pain that felt like it was tearing his whole body apart still caused him to let out a hysterical scream in an instant. The blood pumped by his heart seemed to surge and burn in his veins. Numerous capillaries on the exposed skin surface burst open, and his body temperature instantly rose to a scalding hot level, as if the blood flowing in his veins was no longer blood, but molten iron. Use your chakra to suppress and control your heart. Calm it down," Orochimaru said in a deep voice. Hum. Numerous blue veins bulged around Hyuga Kumakawa's eyes, and the chakra surging within him caused Orochimaru's pupils to shrink. But soon, Hyuga Kumakawa, who had been struggling, froze, and the rapidly rising vital signs on the instruments suddenly stopped, then declined at an even more terrifying speed, with a piercing beeping alarm sounding in the laboratory. "Damn it!" Orochimaru's face instantly darkened. The Hyuga clan should be the most suitable recipients. How could they succumb so quickly? If even Hyuga Kumakawa can't hold out, he'll have no choice but to try and take over the Hyuga main family. There's no other way. The only option now is to cut it off and preserve it before it dies. Thinking of this, Orochimaru was about to use his remaining chakra to condense a scalpel. Thump! A faint sound reached his ears, causing him to suddenly stop moving and look up sharply at the boy in front of him. Boom! Hinata Kumakawa's eyes remained tightly closed, yet a muffled sound emanated from his chest, clearer this time than the first. The laboratory was eerily silent, with only the piercing sound of heartbeats. Boom, dong, dong. Gradually, the dull heartbeat, which had initially sounded like rain pattering on banana leaves, transformed into a deafening, thunderous roar, pounding powerfully in his chest. This is... Orochimaru's face lit up with barely suppressed joy as he walked slowly toward Hibiki Kumakawa's body, as if he were walking toward all the truths of this world. His long, golden pupils subconsciously glanced at the instruments. Sure enough, the vital signs gradually stabilized, and the values were even almost inhuman, incredibly active, and terrifyingly so. In other words, finally, yes, someone answered Orochimaru in a soft voice, as if telling a beautiful fairy tale. Finally, it's a success, he said. Orochimaru, overwhelmed with surprise and joy, paused for a moment before seeing the figure on the operating table slowly open his eyes. He met a pair of eyes that were both familiar and unfamiliar. Those originally pure white pupils now radiated a layered iridescence under the shadowless lamplight, flowing like molten glass, somewhere between pale blue and white. But this is not the source of the strong sense of incongruity that Orochimaru brings. Instead, his eyes showed almost no emotional fluctuation, as calm and deep as a bottomless pool of stagnant water. The blood flowing from the spring was instantly evaporated by the high temperature, and crimson mist rose from his body, shrouding his face in a hazy mist. Blood surged through the veins like thawing spring water. Every cell breathed freely like a spring bud breaking through stone, and unparalleled power rose from every part of the body. You, the owl who witnessed this scene, suddenly widened its pupils and opened its mouth as if to say something. But the next moment, puff! The cut was swift. There was no pain as it passed, only the coldness of death. All that could be heard was a wind, calmer than the night breeze, blowing by. The sound of piercing flesh was very soft and was silently swallowed up by the wind. Orochimaru turned his head almost instinctively, and with a slight tearing sound, he felt a slight stinging pain on his cheek. A red line gradually crawled across his face, spreading little by little, inch by inch, until it stopped at the cheekbone on the side of his face. Blood flowers were blown away like reeds, and dampness slid down his cheek. The owl standing beside him, in a daze, felt its vision in front of it flip and swirl. Thump! The headless body knelt on the ground, blood gushing from the severed neck, and red rain fell inside the laboratory. The head hit the ground with a crisp sound like a watermelon falling to the ground, rolling on the ground, and leaving a trail of blood. A trace of doubt remained on the face of the head as it lay in the pool of blood, its eyes wide open in death. And from the severed neck, blood gushed forth like a fountain, causing a shower of blood to fall on the two remaining figures. I've waited too long for this day. Hyuga Kumakawa sat up, looking at his palm where chakra scalpels were gathered, watching the blood flow like spring water rolling down green leaves and pooling at his fingertips. He looked up at Orochimaru in front of him and smiled. Such a night should be silent. 3 years, then another 3 years. Finally, he completed the innate abilities of this frail body, obtained his true Otsutsuki bloodline, and... Ding! Your Lai Otsutsuki remains and descendants has been judged as enticing into the scheme, hypocritical words, and making a lie come true. Orochimaru experienced a strong emotional fluctuation, reaching the level of complete belief, and gained 10,000 truth points. Comment, a deceptive trick, like a shadow floating on a wall. Even a short person can cast a huge shadow. Remaining realization points, 10,041. Orochimaru looked at that youthful face. In his memory, that face was forever marked by timidity and cowardice. But at this moment, a deep smile was on his face. Like a child mischievously pressing down on the back of an ant, watching it struggle on their fingertips, and then gently crushing it. Utterly pure evil. My first book is out. A newbie author, please add it to your favorites. Okay. End of this chapter. Chapter 2, It's Okay. I was born to be the best actor. Chapter 2, It's Okay. I was born to be the best actor, seeking monthly tickets. Orochimaru still can't forget that day 6 years ago. In the 48th year of the Shinobi World Chronicle, the Third Shinobi World War ended. Besieged on all sides, Konoha paid a heavy price, but finally achieved the ultimate victory in this war. But what's the point? Orochimaru's thin lips moved silently as he calmly nodded and looked ahead. Lead-colored clouds had spread across the entire sky, making the already desolate cemetery even more lonely and sorrowful. The crowd bowed their heads and sobbed like reeds bent by the rain, and the dense black umbrellas resembled a flock of crows. He stood in the black-clad crowd, gazing at the old man at the very front. That was his good teacher, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen Sarutobi wiped the rain stains off the tombstone with his hand, and perhaps touched by his action, a sense of sadness spread through the crowd. Orochimaru looked at the watermelon-headed child to his side. He recognized the child because he often saw him and his genin father running upside down around Konoha. In his memory, the two of them were always optimistic, enthusiastic, and silly, completely disregarding the disgusted and mocking looks from those around them. But now, this was the first time Orochimaru had ever seen this child cry. He cried in a particularly foolish way, his snot and tears mixing together on his face, turning into mud. I heard that this child encountered the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist during a mission, and it was his father, a genin who was ridiculed as a good-for-nothing, who came to cover his child's escape. In the end, he single-handedly killed 4 of them, while the remaining 3, heavily wounded, fled in a sorry state. The genin's father also died in the battle. And that child. Orochimaru's narrow eyes shifted to the side, reflecting a youthful face that was letting the rain soak it without an umbrella. His cries were weak and hoarse, his head bowed and his shoulders trembling, making a hissing sound, like a sleeve being torn intermittently. Tears streamed down her face in a continuous stream, mingling with the rain and flowing from her eyes. Hinata Kumakawa is timid and cowardly and physically weak. While his peers have already begun learning Gentle Fist, this child has not even awakened his Byakugan. He is known as a good-for-nothing within the Hinata clan. The child's father did not actually die on the battlefield. Instead, he was tortured to death by the caged bird seal by the elders of the main family after risking his life to carry the main family member back to the camp, with his chakra almost exhausted. Speaking of which, this child's father served under him during the Second Shinobi World War. How old are these 2 children? 9 years old, 10 years old. Hey. To be thrown onto the battlefield at such a young age, to lose one's only family member at such a young age. Orochimaru looked at the old man at the head of the group again. Dark clouds flashed with branch-shaped lightning, and the world was suddenly dyed grey and white. The dazzling white light cast a long, slender shadow on the ground, resembling a demon, and even Hiruzen Sarutobi's compassionate face was divided into light and shadow. Having experienced 2 Shinobi World Wars, Orochimaru suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of disgust, almost to the point of wanting to vomit. What was the meaning of the lives of those who died in the war? Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. After the crowd dispersed and people left, only desolate tombstones remained. Orochimaru stood before Nawaki's tombstone, a black umbrella as black as ink in the rain. He placed a white chrysanthemum on the tombstone and looked at the familiar name on it, but surprisingly, he felt no emotion whatsoever. Sadness, anger, pity. None at all. But he was not at peace. He simply watched the raindrops fall from the edge of the umbrella, disappearing into the grooves of the inscription, and felt a fear that came from the depths of his heart. That. A timid voice came from behind, as if squeezed out of the throat. Orochimaru snapped out of his daze and instinctively turned to look at the sound, only to be met with a pair of Byakugan eyes. The coldness lingering on that face seemed to startle the other person, causing them to tremble and take a step back, but they eventually regained their footing. You don't look well, so. Under Orochimaru's gaze, his voice grew softer and softer. Orochimaru looked down at the child named Hyuga Kumakawa, knowing that he had been standing in front of the tombstone for too long, and that the other party must be worried about his physical and mental condition. Kind but timid. He is indeed a piece of trash. Orochimaru made his judgment about the child in his mind, and without saying anything more, he coldly strode away. Lord Orochimaru. He heard a voice behind him, and as if possessed, he stopped in his tracks. Do you know what the meaning of life is? Upon hearing this, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly, turned around to look behind him, and saw that the child still looked timid, only tilting his head back, and said in a daze, "My father often mentioned you before he died, saying that you were a hero of Konoha. I think someone like you must know a lot." It's meaningless. Before he could finish speaking, Orochimaru interrupted him softly. Even if it exists, it only exists while a life is alive. And the lives that have died are meaningless. Death is the most just equality for everyone in this world. No matter what you did or what you possessed in your life, you will have nothing when death comes. Thinking of this, Orochimaru felt a chill run deep into his bones once again, and even the feeling of the cold wind sneaking into his collar became more intense, causing his fingers gripping the umbrella to turn white with slight force. Yes, it died, just like water disappearing into water. He would lose everything if he died, but he didn't want to lose everything. He wanted to possess everything. Therefore, he didn't want to die, and he couldn't die. Lord Orochimaru, Hyuga Kumakawa, suddenly raised his head. Do you believe in the existence of gods? Upon hearing this, Orochimaru snapped out of his daze, looked at the timid child in front of him, and suddenly found it somewhat amusing. Just like how he looked down on Jiraiya, who always talked about being the prophetic child who could change the ninja world. In his eyes, both the so-called prophetic child and the so-called god are ridiculous fictional characters conjured up by incompetent people to deceive themselves. There is no such thing as an omniscient and omnipotent God. Even if there were, they would only be a more powerful being. What if he possessed eternal life? Seeing the mockery in Orochimaru's eyes, Hyuga Kumakawa quickly said, "My father gave me a scroll and a corpse, a body before he died. He said the scroll contained the secrets of the Hyuga clan, but I have never been able to open it. And that body is the ancestor of the Hyuga clan. He did not die and will not die. Only his soul left the body." Although Hyuga Kumakawa's voice grew softer and softer, as if he himself didn't quite believe what he was saying, Orochimaru's narrow pupils trembled. In the entire ninja world, Orochimaru is undoubtedly the one who understands the so-called soul the most. For most people, the soul is ethereal and elusive, and it is impossible for anyone to have a soul that exists independently of the body. But in his view, which was obsessed with studying the essence of human life, this was entirely possible, and the Hyuga clan was undoubtedly one of the oldest ninja clans. Looking at the child in front of him, whose forehead was already beaded with cold sweat, Orochimaru inexplicably began to trust what he was saying. It seems like it wouldn't hurt to go and take a look. Then Hinata Kumakawa, who had already lowered his head, suddenly felt a shadow loom over him, and the cold rain stopped falling. "Can you tell me why you're telling me all this?" Hinata Kumakawa looked up blankly, only to meet a pair of narrow eyes. Orochimaru stood in front of him, holding an umbrella, one hand on his knee, lowering his body slightly to face Hyuga Kumakawa at eye level. This must be a secret of the Hyuga clan, right? Why not tell the clan elders? A smile graced his pale face, giving him a unique charm. Father told me that if he died, we could use that scroll and that body to exchange for a good treatment from the clan. Seemingly because Orochimaru's tone had softened, Hyuga Kumakawa's youthful face flushed slightly as he lowered his head and said, "But I don't believe them. My father was driven to his death by them." A hint of resentment could be heard in the slightly trembling voice. Orochimaru glanced at his clenched fist and was surprised that the boy still had some backbone. "You want me to avenge you?" Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile, "Aren't you afraid I'll tell the Hyuga clan about this?" "I don't think someone like you would do that, and even if you really did." Hyuga Kumakawa slowly shook his head, looked up at Orochimaru, and said softly, "I wouldn't lose too much." "It's just me." Orochimaru fell into a brief silence as he met those resolute white eyes. A moment later, he suddenly smiled and placed his hand on Hinata Kumakawa's head. "Indeed, living doesn't necessarily have meaning, but only by living can you find interesting people and things." Later, Hyuga Kumakawa handed the scroll and the body to Orochimaru. Orochimaru broke through part of the sealing technique of the scroll, and thus saw the contents of the first few pages of the scroll, learning about the existence of the Otsutsuki clan at the beginning of the ninja world. Those are celestial beings from outer space. Each member is born with great strength and does not need to train like humans in the ninja world. They can be reborn and resurrected using something called karma. They are beings that transcend death. Each group of 2 members explores the universe, but they have only one goal: to plant something called the divine tree to devour all life on the planet. The members of the main family will return to their home planet, while the members of the branch family will remain on the planet to monitor and ensure that the fruit of the divine tree can ripen smoothly. According to the scroll, the body that had lost its soul belonged to a member of the branch family of the Otsutsuki clan. He passed down his chakra throughout the ninja world and left behind descendants who are now the Hyuga clan. Because Orochimaru had not yet broken the seal on the contents of the scroll, he still did not know why the Otsutsuki clansman had abandoned his body. But even so, it was enough to make Orochimaru tremble with excitement and joy. Such exquisite meridians, such a perfect body. They are completely different species compared to humans in the ninja world. Eternal life is real. Tangible things will die one day, but the soul can exist forever. He only needs to explore the mysteries of the Otsutsuki clan, and one day he will be able to understand all the truths of this world. 6 years have passed since Orochimaru obtained the scroll and the body. Over the course of those 6 years, Orochimaru believed he had completely taken control of Hyuga Kumakawa, and the boy looked at him with nothing but admiration. No matter what the experiment, they would cooperate obediently. They even sent the child to get close to the 3rd generation, and even to the root to deliver messages to Shimura Danzo, and he would not refuse despite his fear. Furthermore, Orochimaru discovered that although this child did not have much ninja talent, he seemed to possess a special curiosity and intuition in scientific research, often inadvertently bringing him inspiration from inconspicuous places. This is extremely rare. Even Tsunade, as a medical master, only used medicine and ninjutsu as means to save lives and had no interest in exploring the secrets and essence of life. For this reason, Orochimaru felt a sense of camaraderie and was somewhat reluctant to kill the boy's soul. But in the end, the greed for truth and immortality overwhelmed that last shred of acceptance. Until now. Looking at the boy who suddenly attacked, and at the headless corpse, Orochimaru even felt a little absurd. It felt as if everything I had experienced over the past 6 years was an unreal dream. The intense emotional shock caused the usually calm Orochimaru to ask a foolish question. "What are you doing?" Fortunately, Hyuga Kumakawa seemed to know what he wanted to ask, so he just smiled and said, "Thank you, Lord Orochimaru. Just as you told me, true ignorance is not a lack of knowledge, but a refusal to acquire knowledge. I also want to tell you that weakness and ignorance are not obstacles to survival. Arrogance is it. Yes, because of his arrogance, Orochimaru never took a useless child, a 10-year-old, seriously. Because of his arrogance, he kept his eyes on the remains of the Otsutsuki, ignoring all the unusual things he was experiencing. After all, what can a timid child, who is only 10 years old, do? What can a piece of trash, who can't even activate his Byakugan, do? Hyuga Kumakawa was like an isolated island that was not open to the outside world. Orochimaru only saw the seemingly normal forest outside, but he did not see the bottomless, calm swamp on the island. It wasn't until things spiraled out of his control that Orochimaru finally woke up from his daze. From beginning to end, it wasn't him who chose Hinata Kumakawa, but Hinata Kumakawa who chose him. He actually got tricked by a little brat. Realizing this, Orochimaru almost laughed in anger, a ferocious smile rising on his pale face. "Do you think you can escape from me?" The moment the words were spoken, Orochimaru vanished from before. A chilling, killing intent erupted at that moment. It was as if a layer of ice formed from a river had burst open, and the torrent that had accumulated under the ice over the years roared as it poured out towards the Hyuga Cloud River in front of them. Hum! A sharp buzzing sound rang out, a sonic boom that cut through the air. Too fast. The kunai lost its form due to its extreme speed, which was so fast that its entire appearance could not be seen. As expected, even Orochimaru, whose chakra was almost exhausted at this moment, was not an opponent that he could deal with at present. The Otsutsuki body that materialized from thousands of realization points was ultimately just an incomplete Otsutsuki body, which could only give him powerful talent rather than strength. Thinking this to himself, Hinata Kumakawa's blue and white pupils reflected the cold light of the kunai, but he remained completely unmoved. Then, under Orochimaru's astonished gaze, he not only did not dodge, but instead took the initiative to meet the sharp edge of the kunai. Puff! Crimson, thick blood gushed out instantly, flowing and splashing onto the ground with a sound. This cut severed half of Hyuga Kumakawa's neck, from his vocal cords and larynx all the way to his cervical spine. Blood would have been choked into his lungs within seconds, and an ordinary person would have almost certainly died. As expected, Hyuga Kumakawa's smile remained unchanged as he watched Orochimaru's lips move, silently saying, "Even now, you still can't bear to pierce his heart. Since that's the case, I've won." Bang! A deafening roar reached his ears, and Orochimaru instinctively looked behind him, where he saw an old, furious face. "Orochimaru, what are you doing?" An angry roar erupted, and Hinata Kumakawa slowly closed his eyes, collapsing onto the operating table, his last thoughts surfacing in his mind. A useless creature, burdened with the life of a caged bird. Fate really did give me the worst possible script. But it's okay. I was born to be the best actor. Requesting monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 3, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Kumakawa is a good kid. Chapter 3, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Kumakawa is a good kid. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound of dripping water echoed in layers within the arched space, mixed with the whistling sound of wind coming from somewhere, and the damp, musty smell, along with the old, rusty odor, filled the air. A completely black cat lay in the shadows, its paws toying with several half-dead white snakes. Once the white snake stops moving, the black cat will loosen its paws, and the snake's body will struggle and writhe. but it will be firmly held down by its paw pads, which has a kind of wicked fun. But soon, as if sensing something, the black cat raised its head. That's why we were able to see its appearance clearly. This cat is entirely black, but its eyes are one white and one black. Normal people would just think of it as a cat with one eye blind. But no one knows that the white eye is the Byakugan that the other four great ninja villages dream of. You should know that the Jonin Ao from Kirigakure was known as the Byakugan Killer because he possessed a Byakugan and even appeared on Konoha's gold-lettered wanted list because of it. No one would ever imagine that a madman would transplant such a precious eye roll onto a cat. But that's exactly what some people did. The black cat lowered its head, picked up the white snake's corpse, and leaped into the shadows of the crisscrossing pipes above, as silently as if it were walking on clouds. Crouching at the corner of the drain pipe, its white pupils dilated slightly, while its black eyes narrowed into slits. It stared at the calm water in the distance. The murky sewage, deep enough to reach above the knees, gleamed with an oily sheen, reflecting the rusty, crisscrossing pipes overhead. Snap, snap. A moment later, ripples appeared on the calm water, and three swift black figures came treading on the water, their figures twisting into strange shapes in the ripples. Hiruzen Sarutobi and his two ANBU members went through a lot of trouble, encountering many traps and decoys set up by Orochimaru along the way, before finally finding a normal path through the intricate underground pipes. Only snakes and rats like this dark and damp environment, and Orochimaru's habits seem to be really getting closer to those of snakes. Hiruzen Sarutobi suddenly stopped and looked at the rusty door in front of him. His expression turned somewhat gloomy, and he raised his hand to signal the ANBU ninja to come forward. Bang! With a muffled thud as the iron gate was forcefully broken open, a pungent stench, a mixture of disinfectant and the sweet, nauseating smell of rotting flesh rushed out with a cold wind. The dim yellow light cast bright shadows, but the scene before him made Hiruzen Sarutobi's pupils shrink. The laboratory walls were stained with dark red blood, forming a mottled abstract painting, and the light bulbs hanging from the ceiling flickered due to the vibrations from the broken door. The ground was covered with layers of dark brown substance, like evidence of a crime that could not be removed no matter how many times it was washed away. Hiruzen Sarutobi clearly heard the sudden, rapid breathing of the two ANBU ninjas beside him, who were staring intently at the several cylindrical glass containers standing in the laboratory. The outline of a curled-up human figure could be vaguely seen in the pale green liquid. The skin had a translucent waxy sheen due to long-term immersion, and the exposed muscle tissue was covered with sutures that looked like maggots. A beating heart could still be seen inside the dissected chest cavity, and snake-like organs were grafted and coiled inside the abdominal cavity, with tangled lines extending out of the container like jellyfish tentacles. There were many such experimental subjects in the laboratory, with blood-red numbers such as 32, 42, and 65 visible. The surrounding iron shelves were also piled with glass jars, containing biological organs at different stages of development, which were strangely vividly twitching in the liquid. The pupils beneath the mask of the ANBU ninja trembled. To be honest, although the scene before him was shocking enough, Hiruzen Sarutobi was already mentally prepared. After all, Orochimaru's earliest involvement in human experimentation was actually with the tacit approval of him and all the higher-ups in Konoha, when he conducted experiments transplanting Hashirama's cells. Although those people volunteered to become test subjects, just to cultivate users who could use wood release so that wood release could reappear in the world, it also proved that Hiruzen Sarutobi was not a soft-hearted person. Even seeing this scene before him, Hiruzen Sarutobi still felt reluctant and guilty towards his disciple. until, in the deepest part of the laboratory, two overlapping shadows were seen. Because Orochimaru was facing away from the door, Hiruzen Sarutobi saw first on the operating table a young face and a severed neck. Hinata Kumakawa's face was no longer smiling. It had long been replaced by fear, and tears slowly slid down his youthful face. Seemingly having spotted Hiruzen Sarutobi, she raised her hand and opened her mouth in his direction, but couldn't utter a sound. But Hiruzen Sarutobi clearly understood what the child wanted to say. "My grandfather for 3 generations," he said. At that moment, Orochimaru, who had heard the noise, turned around. The bright and cold light reflected on his pale face, making his blood-stained, ferocious features appear even more evil and ugly. The headless corpse at Orochimaru's feet was still gushing blood, turning the laboratory into a bloody hell, creating a brutal and grotesque scene. This scene had a greater impact on Hiruzen Sarutobi than the experimental subjects. Most importantly, he knew the child and was very impressed with him. As the honorary principal of the Konoha Ninja Academy, he often takes time to give speeches at the school, cultivating an image of himself as an approachable elder while explaining Konoha's will of fire. On one occasion, he selected Hinata Kumakawa's class, and while explaining the will of fire, noticed the child's face almost overflowing with longing. Afterwards, as usual, the teacher asked the children to write down their feelings. Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't originally have time to read those viewing notes, but he happened to recall that hopeful, innocent face, and on a whim, he dug out that almost dusty viewing notes. Then he froze. "My home is like a large, deeply rooted tree. My grandfathers, 3 generations, were tree trunks, sometimes harmonizing the internal, sometimes providing nourishment. Father is the branch and leaf, sometimes for warmth and protection from the cold, sometimes for shelter from wind and rain. Although they are old and weak, and although the trees are riddled with holes from insects, they still drive their roots deep into the soil to support and protect the entire family and the fruit. And we are all fruits. Our family was overjoyed by our birth. We often enjoyed delicious nutrition, and someone always sheltered us from the wind and rain. But we've forgotten who provided us with nourishment, who sheltered us from the wind and rain. I'm too superior. Perhaps when I fall, I will be devoured and left on the ground. As a seed, I understand how to take root and sprout." Hiruzen Sarutobi was tired of the adults' elaborate praise, and also tired of the children's blind and ignorant love and admiration. However, this piece, without any flowery language, perfectly embodies the will of fire, and even subtly points out the conflict between the ninja clan and the village. The words, spoken by children, reveal a sincere and beautiful sentiment. The last 3 sentences, in particular, struck a chord with Hiruzen Sarutobi in an instant, warming his weary body. Yes, those ninja clans only teach their children to protect the interests of the ninja clan, but never teach them to see themselves as part of Konoha. And those ninja children can only see the branches and leaves that shelter them from the wind and rain, but they can't see him supporting the whole tree and all the fruits. Without a doubt, this is a good child who can transcend the limitations of the ninja clan, focus on the whole of Konoha, and inherit the pure will of fire. If anyone were to come to Hiruzen Sarutobi and tell him that Hyuga Kumakawa was a bad kid, Hiruzen Sarutobi could immediately pull out Enma and smash that person's brains out. But such a good child now. As he watched that figure slowly fall onto the operating table, Hiruzen Sarutobi's complex feelings for Orochimaru quietly dissipated, and veins gradually appeared on his aged face. "Orochimaru," he glared at Orochimaru with extreme anger. "What are you doing? What have you done?" Seeing that Hiruzen Sarutobi was clearly enraged, Orochimaru's heart skipped a beat. He never expected the other party to be so angry. Based on his understanding of his teacher, who was becoming increasingly indecisive, Even if the human experimentation was exposed, the other party would not be able to harm him, and there was still a high chance that he could escape from Konoha. But now, why is it like this? Before Orochimaru could even think of Hyuga Kumikawa, the enraged Hiruzen Sarutobi had already formed hand seals. Haisudyu Shen Wei. Spiritual communication. Bang! As a puff of white smoke erupted, a large, robust monkey wearing a fur coat and a Konoha headband appeared beside Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen, are you in trouble? As soon as the Monkey King appeared, he instinctively asked the question, but when he looked up and saw Orochimaru, he paused and said, "This ape demon." Hiruzen Sarutobi's loud shout interrupted Enma's thoughts. With a loud bang, white smoke erupted, and the ape demon transformed into a stick as thick as a pillar, using the ape demon right off the bat. Seeing this, Orochimaru's face instantly turned ugly. He didn't have time to think about why the old man was so angry today, nor did he care to think about why his white snake hadn't given any warning. If he hesitates any longer, he might really die here today. Wind release, great breakthrough. Hum. A gust of wind mixed with fine wind blades was exhaled from Orochimaru's mouth, and the shrill air pressure caused ripples in the air. The surrounding bottles and jars shattered instantly, and the debris was swept towards Hiruzen Sarutobi and his two companions, obscuring the vision of the two ANBU ninjas. Even now, Orochimaru still thought of taking Hyuga Kumikawa with him before he fled. But Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't even look. His staff grew longer, and he smashed it down on Orochimaru in the distance. Puff! Orochimaru, who had already exhausted his chakra due to the organ transplant surgery, was instantly sent flying by this blow while trying to capture Hyuga Kumikawa. In midair, he vomited a mouthful of thick, bloody blood mixed with fragments of his organs. Damn it, damn it. Orochimaru glared hatefully at Hiruzen Sarutobi, whose expression was grim. Seeing that the other man instantly teleported to Hyuga Kumikawa's side, Orochimaru knew that he probably wouldn't be able to take Hyuga Kumikawa away this time. Realizing this, Orochimaru calmed down, despite his reluctance to accept it. Earth release, submerged navigation. Using that force, Orochimaru quickly formed hand seals in midair, his feet planted on the ceiling. The solid sand beneath his feet turned into fluid, and his body sank into the ground like a fish swimming in water. Sandame Sama. Two ANBU ninjas stepped forward and looked at Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was looking up with a cold expression. Hiruzen Sarutobi withdrew his gaze, his anger subsiding somewhat. He looked at Hyuga Kumikawa beside him and said, "Take this child to the doctor immediately and do everything you can to save his life." Yes, the two ANBU ninjas didn't ask any more questions, nodded in response, picked up Hyuga Kumikawa, and disappeared from the spot in an instant. At this moment, Orochimaru, who was rapidly ascending from the ground, clutched his chest, his face deathly pale. Even if he were at his peak, he wouldn't be able to defeat Hiruzen Sarutobi, let alone now that his chakra is almost completely depleted. So now all he can do is try his best to escape Konoha. Hyuga Kumikawa can only be left in Konoha for the time being, and he has to keep Hyuga Kumikawa alive and keep it a secret. Thinking of this, I felt extremely frustrated. How could things suddenly spiral out of control? Oh right, it's all because of that damn brat. But was all of this done by that brat? Not only did they scheme against him for years, but they also dragged the old man into it. Everything that happened today was part of their plan. That kid's only 15. Is he some kind of monster? As his thoughts raced through his mind, Orochimaru burst forth from the ground, only to be met by a figure. Wearing an ANBU mask, carrying a short sword on his back, and sporting signature silver hair. Kakashi Hatake. Raikiri. Without uttering a single word, he charged forward wielding the lightning blade, instantly making Orochimaru laugh in exasperation. Are all these brats so overconfident? Just as Orochimaru felt a murderous intent rising in his heart, a barely perceptible voice entered his ears. Chinese letter. This is. Orochimaru looked down at his feet and saw a black cat dart out, then glance up at him one last time. A human-like mockery appeared on the cat's face. The key is. Eye roll. Upon noticing the black cat's white eyes, Orochimaru's narrow pupils instantly contracted. The next moment, before they could even react. Boom! The explosions of several detonating tags echoed through the quiet night, and the entire experimental base was shattered by a terrifying force. The flat ground cracked and caved in as if an earthquake had struck, and flesh and blood scattered and flew like rain under the impact of the explosion. At the same time, in the opposite direction, two ANBU ninjas who were leaping in the trees instinctively stopped upon hearing a loud noise coming from afar. Is that Lord Sandai? They looked in the direction of the voice and couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. Unbeknownst to them, Hinata Kumikawa, who was in their arms, had a subtle smile on his face. Did I still show mercy? He thought to himself with a smile. I hope Orochimaru will like my final gift. He didn't expect Hiruzen Sarutobai's momentary anger to actually kill Orochimaru, and emotional identification couldn't compare to decades of master-disciple relationship. Once Hiruzen Sarutobai has completely calmed down, he might regret that he went too far. But it doesn't matter. Hinata Kumikawa only wanted to clear his name. Whether Orochimaru lived or died was irrelevant. Moreover, a useful chess piece like Orochimaru isn't something you can find just anywhere. It would be a shame if it died before being completely drained. Thinking of this, Hinata Kumikawa glanced at the sky. It was already 5 in the morning, and the morning glow was already reflected on the horizon. The sun is both sunset and sunrise at every moment. As it extinguishes itself and descends the mountain to gather the desolate afterglow, it is also the moment when it burns on the other side, climbing up the mountain peak and spreading its blazing morning light. Next, it's time for the Tenseigen, Hinata Kumikawa thought to himself with a soft laugh as he closed his eyes. Hey, the Hyuga clan, birds in a cage. Make the illusory appear real, and the real appear illusory. The strong appear weak, and the weak appear strong. Starting today, the roles of offense and defense have shifted. The plot of this book is basically a recreation based on the original setting, but it will not follow the original unchanged. The plot will go completely off track and change all the plot. This is all normal. I have written it like this before. I guarantee it will be exciting. For example, the opening scene where Orochimaru's human experiments are exposed and Hiruzen Sarutobai, out of pity, lets Orochimaru go is a plot point that appears in both the manga and the anime. Although there are subtle differences between the two, for example, in the anime, when faced with Enma's questioning, the third Hokage bluntly stated that he could not kill Orochimaru, while in the manga he simply remained silent, and Orochimaru's laboratory was much bloodier than in the anime. The plot is actually quite similar. I've read the Naruto anime and manga official guidebook 4 or 5 times in October. It doesn't contain any of the original work's tropes like 8 colors of Konoha, cold-blooded Orochimaru, Shinigami Hiruzen Sarutobai, elite Jonin, cage level, or Hanzo the demigod. So everyone can read with peace of mind. If you see anything that is different from the fanfiction you've read before, you can ask if you're curious. But it's best not to say, hey, you wrote this wrong, right away. Otherwise, don't blame October for pointing out the original setting later, ha ha ha. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, White Snake Immortal. Your fate has actually been rewritten. Chapter 4, White Snake Immortal. Your fate has actually been rewritten. Swish, swish. As night fell, rain pattered on the roof, the falling raindrops tracing parabolic arcs, large drops shattering upon impact, and the lights of the trees glowing hazily like a mirage. Like owl-like shadows, they leaped across the rooftops, all dressed in lightweight grey tactical vests, with sheathed short knives or straight blades slung across their backs. Many of them still carried the lingering smell of blood, and their faces beneath the white masks exuded a solemn and cold aura, causing the villagers on the street to avoid them at all costs. They walked through the bustling streets and arrived at the edge of a remote village. Stop in front of a building marked with the character Chinese letter, An, which is the building and headquarters of Konoha's Anbu. Almost all the ANBU ninjas were urgently summoned from their homes. Although the scene was crowded, it was orderly and silent. The atmosphere was so oppressive and solemn that it was like attending a funeral. Among those ANBU ninjas, Kakashi Hatake was prominently featured. His forehead was wrapped in bandages, his brows were tightly furrowed, and his dead fish eyes were full of doubt. Who placed those explosive tags there? Was it the third Hokage? Kakashi naturally didn't see the strange black cat. He only saw Orochimaru emerge from the ground and be blown away in midair by the exploding tags beneath his feet. Although Kakashi, who was very close by, was affected by the blast, it was far less than the damage Orochimaru suffered head-on. Even though he managed to use ninjutsu to try and offset the impact of the explosion, his arm was still blown off by the terrifying power. However, it seems that the third-generation elder did not make any arrangements beforehand. Crunch! The door to the dark headquarters building in front of them was pushed open, shattering the deathly silence with a piercing sound. Kakashi could only shake off his doubts, put on his mask, and look up to see two figures walking out one after the other. Besides Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was wearing a red and white Hokage robe and a Hokage hat, there was also an old man wearing a black kimono with bandages wrapped around his right arm and right eye. His narrow eyes and the scar on his chin made him look somewhat gloomy. The founder and leader of Root, who controls the darkness of Konoha, and the most powerful person after the Hokage. Shimura Danzo. This emergency summons is to capture Orochimaru, who escaped during the previous operation, as soon as possible. Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the group of Anbu ninjas, and said calmly and directly, "According to the report, Orochimaru is seriously injured. Judging from his injuries, it will not be easy for him to leave the land of fire in a short time. Orochimaru's knowledge, information, and technology are invaluable assets to Konoha. We hope you will bring him back alive if possible. If he defects from the land of fire, it will be a fatal blow to Konoha. At that time." He paused for a moment before continuing, "We must race against time before Orochimaru crosses the border. Everyone, search with all your might." Having said that, Hiruzen Sarutobi raised his head, his expression cold, and without uttering any further words, said in a deep voice, "Disperse." Swish, swish. The ninjas vanished in shadows, their henchmen now relentlessly pursuing the cunning snake, whether in the sky, on the ground, or in the water. Once all the Anbu ninjas had left, Hiruzen Sarutobi turned and walked towards the Anbu building. But as he brushed past Danzo Shimura, a mocking voice reached his ears. "She really dotes on her adorable apprentice." Hiruzen Sarutobi stopped and lowered his head slightly. His face was shrouded in the shadow of his straw hat, making it impossible to see his expression. "Someone like you actually failed," Shimura Danzo continued. "I heard you rescued a Hyuga clan child from Orochimaru." The two had been friends for decades, so how could Hiruzen Sarutobi not understand the meaning behind his words? He sighed inwardly, feeling somewhat weary. "He was just a poor child," Hiruzen Sarutobi explained, adding, "He was from a branch family of the Hyuga clan." "It means give up on that idea." Regardless of whether Orochimaru achieved any experimental results on that child, the branch family members who were implanted with the caged bird seal could never be of use to you. Otherwise, based solely on the will of fire, displayed by Hyuga Kumikawa, Sarutobi Hiruzen would have already attempted to access and absorb it, even if it were a waste, without talent. Even if he were an ordinary person from a common background, he could still be assigned to be a teacher at the Ninja Academy. Unfortunately, he wasn't. Members of the Hyuga clan's branch families can only serve as servants of the main family and have no other value. As long as a member of the Hyuga clan's main branch activates the secret seal, they can easily destroy the brain nerves of the person possessing the caged bird. Danzo's seal of severing the root of tongue disaster was only meant to prevent people from revealing confidential information. It would paralyze his entire body, rendering him unable to speak or move. Compared to this, he was a merciful and kind person. Upon hearing this, Shimura Danzo simply faced the distant night sky, closed his eyes, seemingly abandoning his plans, and his tone returned to its usual calm and indifferent. No matter what, I will do my best to assist. I will do everything in my power for Konoha. I'm truly sorry. Hiruzen Sarutobi glanced at him and said calmly, I'm sorry to have troubled you. Having said that, he ignored Danzo and walked into the Ambu building. Although Danzo's words were implying that he only cared about his personal feelings and not the interests of Konoha, and although Danzo may have had some entanglement with Orochimaru in the past. But from the moment Orochimaru defected, Hiruzen Sarutobi knew that his old friend would do everything in his power, just as he had said, to eliminate the potential threat Orochimaru posed to Konoha. Perhaps the explosion that severely injured Orochimaru was a contingency plan that Danzo had prepared in advance without Orochimaru's knowledge. This is why he repeatedly ignored the other party's petty actions. After all, in his view, everything Danzo did was ultimately for Konoha. Just like that child from the Hyuga clan said, for the big tree of Konoha to grow, it does indeed need roots that never see the light of day. However, all that is needed is a root that is unseen by the sun. After Hiruzen Sarutobi left, Danzo Shimura opened his eyes. Quack! A crow that had been circling overhead flew down, landed on Danzo's shoulder, and spat out the small scroll it was holding in its beak, which landed in Danzo's raised hand. Danzo lowered his head and opened the small scroll. Densely packed small characters came into view, which were the unique cryptic script of the root. The scroll records the subsequent cleaning work at the experimental base, but unfortunately, most of Orochimaru's experimental equipment and records were destroyed in the explosive impact of those detonating tags. Based on the detection of the explosion traces, the detonating tokens were actually deployed throughout the entire underground pipeline, which could be said to have completely destroyed the entire experimental base. You should know that those experimental instruments were all purchased by Danzo at great expense through special channels, and some of them didn't even have roots. Was it Orochimaru who did this? He wouldn't even leave me a piece of the record, even if it was destroyed. Danzo Shimura raised his head, his narrow eyes filled with gloom, but he quickly dismissed the idea. Orochimaru also lost an arm in the explosion of the explosive tag. He might be able to recover with his specially modified body, but given that his chakra was almost depleted at the time, there was no need for him to risk his severely injured body to put on this act. Furthermore, given Sarutobi's guilt towards Orochimaru and his indecisiveness, he could never bring himself to go to such lengths to exterminate Orochimaru. Given Danzo's understanding of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the guy might still think that Danzo was the one who secretly did it. So who else? Danzo's brows gradually furrowed and tightened as he vaguely sensed an invisible hand manipulating all these events in the shadows. He thought of the only surviving child, but reason told him it was impossible. Such a clean, efficient, traceless, insidious, and ruthless method, even involving Orochimaru and Sarutobi, could never have been done by a 15-year-old child. It's even less likely that a child from a branch family of the Hyuga clan, without parents and with a timid personality, could do it. Damn it, who is it? Danzo gripped the scroll tightly and crushed it, feeling utterly disgusted by the unknown threat lurking in the darkness, yet utterly powerless against it. The other party must be an extremely dangerous individual, posing an even greater threat to Konoha than Orochimaru. Danzo Shimura, known as the Darkness of the Ninja, would never allow such a guy to continue to exist. Better to kill the innocent than let the guilty go free. Thinking of this, and recalling the child from the Hyuga branch family, Danzo narrowed his eyes slightly, took out a scroll from his pocket, wrote some secret text on it, and let a crow carry it away in its beak. He was just a useless member of a branch family of the Hyuga clan, and no one would care even if he died in an accident. Meanwhile, in the Land of Fire, in a forest hundreds of kilometers away from Konoha, click! The sound of snapping branches echoed from deep within the forest, startling several birds that were taking shelter from the rain under the trees. A figure staggered out of the shadows. Hey, hey! Orochimaru staggered and leaned against a tree, catching his breath as he tasted the rust between his teeth. The blood bubbles that had been coughing up were bursting in his throat. His left arm was severed at the forearm, with the bloody, rotten flesh and white bone fragments clearly visible, and half of his clothes were soaked in blood. This is probably the most serious and fatal injury he has suffered since his body was modified. Having anticipated this day, he naturally had a backup plan within the Land of Fire, a group called Ibli. Possessing the bloodline limit of smoke transformation, she can turn her body into smoke and enter a person's body in smoke form to control their actions. However, she also has the weakness of dissipating and dying when exposed to wind while in smoke form. Because they were unable to control this ability stably, many members of the Ibli clan died. It was only with his help that they were able to stabilize their ability, and their lifespans were extended to some extent. The blood of the Ibli tribe can heal injuries, so he stored it as a blood pack. If he hadn't been severely injured by the final detonation tag explosion, even if he had been wounded by the old man, he could have survived and reached that place alive. Damn it, it's all because of that brat. Orochimaru's hoarse voice was filled with resentment and anger. He touched the scroll on his chest. Fortunately, the scroll containing ancient secrets was still in his possession. As long as we continue to find a way to break the sealing technique, we will surely learn more secrets of the Otsutsuki clan. In addition, he also took a piece of flesh from that Otsutsuki body, if the impure world reincarnation technique could be perfected. The only way now is to have Manda use the reverse summoning technique, so that he can safely escape the Land of Fire. But given the beastly nature of Manda, his first reaction upon seeing him severely injured would be to swallow him whole. Moreover, the white serpent sage of Ryucha Cave, along with his three great serpents, Takoshiheim, Ikikishimaheim, and Takitsuheim, are no pushovers either. Ahem. Orochimaru suddenly coughed up blood, completely interrupting his thoughts. My vision blurred, and the buzzing in my ears and the increasingly uncontrollable tactile sensations filled my senses. The twisted shadows of the trees seemed to transform into sharp claws, and the vines into tripwires, all of which made him realize that his bodily functions were gradually collapsing. The fear of death made him dig his fingers deep into the tree trunk, crushing the moss on the tree into a bloody green sap in his palm. He still wants to seek revenge on that brat, and he wants to grasp all the truths of the world. No matter what, I can't die here. Just as Orochimaru made up his mind and prepared to use the summoning technique. Bang! A cloud of white smoke suddenly exploded, and Orochimaru's figure disappeared from the spot. A few seconds later, a tall figure appeared, with long white hair reaching his waist. It was Jiraiya who had come after them. Reverse summoning jutsu, Jiraiya frowned. Orochimaru, what exactly are you? At the same time, in a space transformed from a natural cave, stalactites with barbed shapes hung from the cave's dome. The ground is covered with blue stone bricks with serpentine reliefs. Dark green phosphorescent flames burn eerily in the niches, and blue-purple minerals flicker between the rock walls. Here it is. Orochimaru frowned as he opened his eyes, and seeing the familiar scene before him, he exclaimed in surprise, Ryucha Cave. He clearly hasn't been able to communicate with 10,000 snakes, so how could he have been reverse communicated to this place? Orochimaru. Before Orochimaru could figure out what was going on, an old, ethereal voice entered his ears, and he subconsciously looked up in the direction of the voice. A massive white phosphorus serpent, coiled atop a stone seat, came into view. The white snake sage, the founder of Ryucha Cave, is a white-scaled serpent that has lived for over 1,000 years. His strength is so terrifying that Orochimaru could not even begin to fathom it. Normally, the white snake immortal appears as an elderly woman dressed in a white robe. But at this moment, Orochimaru saw the other party's true form for the first time. The other party's calm demeanor dissipated, replaced by the stench of a snake's mouth. How is that possible? The white phosphorus serpent stared intently at Orochimaru with its amber-colored snake eyes, its face displaying a human-like expression of surprise and uncertainty. Your fate has actually been rewritten. Meanwhile, in Konoha village, inside a dilapidated house on the edge of the Hyuga clan's territory. Meow. A soft meow mixed with the chirping of crickets reached his ears, and Hinata Kumakawa, who had been lying on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. Finally, we're gone. He sat up in bed, turned to look at the peaceful night outside the window, touched the bandage on his neck, and a smile appeared on his face. Such a serious and potentially fatal injury has been mostly recovered in just one day. While this level of healing ability is not as terrifying or extreme as Hashirama's cells, it is enough to help him overcome the weakness of being a fragile ninja. And this is just one of the benefits that this body has brought him. Thinking of this, Hinata Kumakawa looked at the panel that appeared in front of him. Name, Hinata Kumakawa. Age, 15. Bloodline, Hyuga clan right arrow Otsutsuki clan, 5%. Chakra limit, D rank right arrow S rank. Chakra properties, wind right arrow wind, fire, water, earth, lightning, yin, yang. Ninjutsu. End of this chapter. Chapter 5, The Purest Otsutsuki Bloodline. Chapter 5, The Purest Otsutsuki Bloodline. Name, Hinata Kumakawa. Age, 15. Bloodline, Hyuga clan right arrow Otsutsuki clan, 5%. Chakra limit, D rank right arrow S rank. Chakra properties, wind right arrow wind, fire, water, earth, lightning, yin, yang. Ninjutsu, 3-body technique, wind release, wind cutting technique, rank B, chakra scalpel, rank A. Physical skills, gentle fist technique, 8 trigrams, 32 palms, rank C. 8 gates formation, opening gate, forbidden technique. Bloodline limit, Tensegan, 10%. Achievements, crying over nothing, sweet talk, winning over the enemy, entering the game with one's own body honeyed words, but a treacherous heart, making a fake relationship real. Remaining realization points, 10,187. As expected, murder and arson bring wealth and honor. It certainly justifies all my investments over the years. Hinata Kumakawa glanced at the intermittently increasing realization points. This was the first time he had ever seen realization points reach 5 digits. As the name suggests, The function of fulfillment points is to create external objects of one's imagination, but they cannot be directly applied to oneself to increase one's strength. For example, directly possessing the Otsutsuki bloodline is impossible, but there are ways to manifest the awakening of the Otsutsuki bloodline. The way to obtain truth points is to make more people believe in your lie and cause them to have strong emotional fluctuations. The criteria for judging the number of achievement points obtained are primarily based on the tricks used in the process, which is the achievement item displayed on the panel. Crying like a crocodile, sweet talk, and deceiving others are three tricks he used several times before. Getting involved, honeyed words and a hidden dagger, and making a fake seem real are three tricks he used against Orochimaru. The latter three are clearly at a higher level than the former three, and naturally, they can obtain more realization points. Secondly, the quantity and quality of the targets, that is, their strength, are also important. The difficulty of fooling a genin is different from that of fooling Orochimaru, and the number of realization points obtained will naturally be different as well. Finally, there's the degree to which the target trusts the lie, and the intensity of the resulting emotional fluctuations. When Hinata Kumikawa transmigrated to this world and obtained the system, his newbie gift pack only contained a paltry 100 points of realization. According to his tests, 1 point of truth can roughly materialize a refined kunai, a piece of chakra-conducting metal the size of a fingernail, and a standard explosive tag with poor power. A 100-point success rate isn't a lot, but it's not a small amount either. It's not enough to manifest very powerful ninjutsu, and bloodline limits are out of the question, making it rather useless. Therefore, after gaining a general understanding of his current predicament, Hyuga Kumikawa set his sights on Orochimaru. Hinata Kumikawa knew that his greatest asset was not the useless 100 true points, but his understanding of the world. Having experienced 2 shinobi world wars, Orochimaru's yearning for truth and fear of death have made immortality an obsession in his heart. Just like later, when Orochimaru's body had collapsed, and he had to immediately reincarnate into a new body, Orochimaru still kept thinking about Sasuke's return so that he could take back that body. Kabuto Yakashi, with just one sentence, instilled fear in Orochimaru, causing him to compromise. If I don't reincarnate immediately, I'll lose everything. Is that all right? For Orochimaru, losing everything was an unbearable pain, even surpassing his obsession with the Sharingan. What he wanted was never immortality or the Sharingan. He wanted everything, to learn all the ninjutsu in the ninja world and to grasp all the truths of the world. This can only be achieved by surviving, and only by having a stronger bloodline. Thus, a forged ancient scroll, containing 2 parts fake and 8 parts real, was used to create a sealing spell. Yes, there was actually nothing behind that scroll. Orochimaru couldn't possibly break the seal because Hyuga Kumikawa hadn't figured out how to make up the rest of the story. Or rather, Hyuga Kumikawa has already made up his mind, but doesn't intend for Orochimaru to see it now. From beginning to end, what Orochimaru could see was what Hyuga Kumikawa wanted him to see. Even Orochimaru's ability to take the scroll and flesh away was intentional, so that he could continue to guide Orochimaru based on subsequent events. The more intelligent and proud a person is, the more convinced they are of their own judgment. These only cost 30 points of authenticity, while the fake sealing technique cost more. The aged scroll only cost 1 point of authenticity, and the so-called secrets were simply fabricated. The final 70 points of truth were used by Hyuga Kumikawa to materialize an empty shell, a shell that was merely aesthetically pleasing but actually empty inside, which was the body of the Otsutsuki clan that Orochimaru spoke of. These 2 items, especially the secrets recorded in the scroll, had a tremendous impact on Orochimaru's worldview, instantly multiplying Hyuga Kumikawa's chances of achieving enlightenment several times over. The points he gradually acquired were used by Hyuga Kumikawa to fill that empty shell. Over the years, he spent more than 10,000 points to exchange for real Otsutsuki clan organs. However, this Otsutsuki clan is the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, not the Otsutsuki clan from outer space. The true physique of the Otsutsuki clan should at least be at the level of the Sage of Six Paths, which means they are a completely different species from humans in the ninja world. 10,000 points of truth are indeed insufficient to manifest the true body of the Otsutsuki. Looking at the 5% Otsutsuki clan bloodline, Hyuga Kumikawa's eyes flickered slightly, thinking to himself, when I manifest, the bloodline purity I'm comparing myself to is that of Otsutsuki Tonri. Tonri possesses the purest Otsutsuki clan bloodline. Even Urashiki Otsutsuki refers to him as a fellow clansman instead of the inferior creature. He used to refer to Sasuke and Naruto. It is estimated that, apart from Kaguya, there is no Otsutsuki clan descendant in the entire ninja world with a purer bloodline than him. A bloodline comparable to mine is already the limit I can bear. In addition, that body was tailor-made with me as the template, so the organs of that body can fit perfectly into my body, allowing my body to undergo a tremendous transformation. However, it is unknown what level this body has reached. With this in mind, Hinata Kumikawa got out of bed and went into another room. Time flies, the rain gradually stopped, and the light of dawn pierced the darkness of night, shining on the lawn and reflecting the halo of dew. Konoha was still quiet at dawn, especially among the Hyuga clan, who valued hierarchy and rules. However, a series of strange laughs shattered the peace of the tribe. Oh ho, now is the perfect time to unleash your youthful energy, ha ha ha. The laughter appeared even before the people arrived, causing the Hyuga clansmen on duty to twitch at the corners of their mouths before they saw the green shadow in the distance. He had kappa-like hair, thick black eyebrows, a red scarf, a headband tied around his waist, and bandages wrapped around his hands. Wearing a strange green bodysuit, he ran upside down, kicking up clouds of dust. He was the only one in the entire Hidden Leaf village at the moment. Konoha, tune in, might guy. End of this chapter. Chapter 6, 8 Gates Formation. Breaking through physical limits. Chapter 6, 8 Gates Formation. Breaking through physical limits. It's that crude brute again. He's a perfect match for that good-for-nothing. The Hyuga clan members tried their best to hide the disgust and contempt in their eyes. Although they looked down on Might Guy, they did not stop him from leaving the Hyuga clan's territory. Because if they did that, it would be disrespectful to the Hyuga clan. Good morning. Meeting his gaze, Matt Kai grinned, his white teeth gleaming brightly in the sunlight. Ignoring the Hyuga clan's dismissive attitude, Might Guy dusted himself off and went inside. Hey, Yunchuan, wake up, wake up. Might Guy skillfully walked to the residence of Hinata Kumikawa and shouted in a passionate voice, the horn of morning training has sounded. Youth won't wait for those who sleep in. Come in, Senior Kai. Hearing the sounds coming from the room, Matt Kai grinned, said excuse me, and went inside. Without even glancing in the direction of the bedroom, he walked straight to another room. Yun Chuan, you're here again. Matt Kai was talking as he pulled the door open and went in, but the words he was about to say suddenly stopped. It wasn't because of the various training equipment displayed in the room, but because of the figure standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror that covered the entire wall. He was hanging naked from the waist up on the horizontal bar, with weights wrapped around his legs. Click, click. Every time he slowly stretches out his arms and lowers them, the position is precise and accurate, and he will be pulled up as soon as his toes lightly touch the ground. The orange-red light from outside the window cast a hazy glow, illuminating Hinata Kumikawa's tall, slender, and well-defined figure, as if covering him with a faint golden light. Matt Key also noticed the puddle at his feet, which was clearly accumulated from sweat, indicating that he had been in that position for a long time. Yan Chuan, you. The experienced Might Guy stared in disbelief as he watched Hinata Kumakawa rise and fall on the horizontal bar, and couldn't help but ask, "You didn't sleep all night, did you?" The muscles in my upper body were taut, and the blood vessels were slightly bulging. The muscles in my arms were like steel bars, intertwined and tearing under the weight. I could almost feel the muscles groaning. Hinata Kumakawa did not respond, and Mike Guy did not care. Instead, he became excited. Based on his experience, he could naturally tell that Yan Chuan's body was nearing its limit, and he had even opened the first gate of the 8 gates formation. By removing brain restrictions, one can unleash 100% of their physical capabilities, thus increasing attack and speed by overloading the body's energy. Even so, the arms, thighs, and all the other parts of the body that were subjected to force had reached their limits, and the originally standard movements began to become sluggish. Slowing down means greater physical exertion, and every movement is a challenge to the body's limits. But that's what youth is all about. How can youth stand still? However, as time passed, Hyuga Kumakawa did not stop, and Mike Guy's smile gradually faded, his brows gradually furrowing. "If I continue like this, I'll suffer hidden injuries," he thought to himself. Even someone as driven as him, who strives to surpass his own limits every day, must take daily medicinal baths to avoid leaving hidden injuries on his body. As for Hyuga Kumakawa's current strength, continuing like this would be counterproductive. Cloud. When Matt Kay tried to speak up and dissuade him, the situation changed. Coal. Hinata Kumakawa slowly exhaled a condensed white mist, which rose from his body. The sweat that was flowing from his body was instantly evaporated by the high temperature, which was caused by his rapid metabolism and increased body temperature. 8 gates formation, rest gate. Relieve physical fatigue limitations. Overload the body to extract energy to restore physical strength, and offset the fatigue caused by the energy consumption rate of opening the door. In this state, every cell in Hinata Kumakawa's body seemed to breathe, and power flowed through his blood vessels and bones like magma, causing his body temperature to rise to a level that could be described as scalding hot. The limit of physical strength was broken, and the threshold of physical collapse rose wildly again. Hinata Kumakawa's body stabilized again, and the howling wind rose and fell like a surging tide. Bang! The terrifyingly heavy load finally landed on the ground, and the loud thud brought the astonished Mike Guy back to his senses. "Hiss!" he gasped as he looked at Hyuga Kumakawa wiping his sweat with a towel, but his face quickly lit up with an excited and joyful smile as he asked, "Kumakawa, you can open the rest gate now." Hinata Kumakawa slightly raised his head, but when Mike Guy met his eyes, he subconsciously took a step back. Those eyes. Before Kai could see clearly, he felt a stinging pain in his eyes and blinked. When he opened his eyes again to look at Yan Chuan, the sensation had already dissipated. "Senior Kai, what's wrong?" Hinata Kumakawa seemed to still be the same Hinata Kumakawa, with a gentle, harmless smile on his face. "Ah, no, nothing." Mike Guy scratched his head in confusion. But soon, looking at Hinata Kumakawa, he found himself with tears streaming down his face, sobbing uncontrollably. "Kumakawa, your youth is so passionate, it's so moving. I want to learn from you." "Hi, senpai." Hinata Kumakawa looked somewhat helpless and could only smile. "Excuse me, Kai senpai, please wait a moment. I'll go take a shower first." Seeing him nodding and wiping away his tears, Yan Chuan picked up his clothes and went into the shower room. "Step into the shower, take off your clothes, stand on the smooth tiles and reach out to turn on the shower." The showerhead made a soft hissing sound as cold water flowed down his loose black hair, washing over his bulging muscles through the shadows of his butterfly-like shoulder blades. gradually soaking his entire body. The water flowed like a stream through the rocks, and the chill did not make him feel uncomfortable at all, nor did it lower his body temperature. Bloodline, Otsutsuki clan, 5% right arrow, 5.5%. Bloodline limit, unknown stage 1, 10% right arrow, 12%. After glancing at the panel, Hinata Kumakawa lowered his head, raised his hands, and slowly clenched them, his bones cracking and the air crackling. Click! Immediately he exhaled, his heart rate and blood flow gradually decreased, and his muscles and tendons, which had overheated due to exercise, slowly returned to normal. I never imagined that the Eight Gates formation could actually unleash the potential of one's bloodline and increase its purity. Sensing that power unlike anything he'd ever felt before, Hinata Kumakawa's lips curled into a smile. It's as if the shackles binding my body have been broken. This feeling is truly captivating. He never neglected his physical training, so he was slender but not bony. However, the muscle outline he developed was not regular, just like some people who only train their upper body, which makes their overall muscles look disproportionate. However, after being modified by the Otsutsuki bloodline, Hyuga Kumakawa's muscles gradually became more coordinated and distributed in the most suitable way to exert force, instead of being pointed and useless. If he was a furnace that restrained its flames yet still shone brightly before, he is now a seemingly dormant but surging active volcano. Hinata Kumakawa could sense that the Eight Gates released formation. Rest Gate, which had been stuck for 2 years, was far from his current end. Moreover, he could sense that those eyes were throbbing, just a little bit away from awakening their abilities. A terrifying, silent power lies hidden in those eyes. This is the power that he has fully mastered, and that truly belongs to him. With this confidence, I dare to use lies to bring Hyuga to its knees. A surge of impulse welled up in Hyuga Unkawa's heart. Instead of using this power to steadily become stronger, he subconsciously wanted to use it to uncover even bigger lies and fool more and stronger people. Only in this way can he feel the joy of life. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Hinata Hyuga's third birthday. Chapter 7, Hinata Hyuga's third birthday. Splash. As the temperature in the shower room gradually rose, the fine water droplets of steam clung to the tiles, becoming round and full. When Hinata Unkawa stepped out of the shower room, his figure became blurred in the mist. He walked to the bathroom, stopped, and stared at his face in the mirror. With well-defined facial features, a broad forehead, a straight nose, and gentle eyebrows, he looks like a good child. He looks the same in both his past and present lives. Even if his photo is posted on a wanted poster, other people would mistake it for a certificate of being a model student at first glance. Only this familiar face has changed. Hinata Kumakawa swept his wet black hair back to reveal his forehead, his calm gaze sweeping over the ugly and glaring swastika-shaped curse mark. Bird in a cage, bird in a cage. Hinata Kumakawa closed his eyes and concentrated, and after a moment, his eyelids trembled and he slowly opened them. The person in the mirror was a different person. The gentle, harmless demeanor had vanished, and the profile was hidden in the shadows of the light, revealing a deep, defined silhouette. The white in her originally pure eyes melted away like the first snow meeting the sun, and the pale blue pupils, like the surface of a calm lake, flowed with starlight, giving people a stunning beauty while also possessing a profound and majestic aura. No one would regard him as the good-for-nothing he once was, and no one would even want to look him in the eye at this moment, because his spear-like aura was spreading silently, and looking into his eyes was like having a needle hanging in front of their eyes. The caged bird curse mark on his forehead also seemed to have faded considerably. Is this the power of the Tenseigen? Sensing the untapped power deep within his eyes, Hyuga Kumakawa raised a hand to touch his eyes, pondering, what is this? a transitional form from the Byakugan to the Tenseigan. Otsutsuki Tonri transformed his Byakugan into the Tenseigan, seemingly undergoing several fetal movements in the process. According to memories from a past life, the Tenseigan is a top-tier power comparable to the Rinnegan. It seems there are only two ways to obtain the Tenseigan. The first method is to combine Otsutsuki Tonri's chakra with the pure Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. Secondly, he fused and evolved a large number of Byakugan from the Otsutsuki clan into the Tenseigan. The former possesses a pure bloodline comparable to that of Tonri Otsutsuki, not the chakra that Tonri Otsutsuki spoke of. Hyuga Kumikawa was unsure whether the two were the same thing. In the original work, only Hamura Otsutsuki and Tonri Otsutsuki possessed the Tenseigan. Kaguya Otsutsuki and several other members of the Otsutsuki clan never revealed it, and even Hamura never truly demonstrated the Tenseigan's abilities. Otsutsuki Tonri, the direct descendant of Otsutsuki Hamura, also experienced countless fetal movements, and it is unknown whether these fetal movements pose any danger. If the Rinnegan is the orthodox ability that the Otsutsuki clan obtained after consuming the fruit of the divine tree, then the Tenseigan seems to be an ability that is a mutation of the Byakugan, using the Rinnegan's diverse functions to gain immense power. Yan Chuan, are you done washing? The sound coming from outside the shower room interrupted Hinata Kumikawa's thoughts. He brushed his hair aside, and then slowly and forcefully moved his facial muscles, and a gentle, harmless smile returned to his face. Here it comes, here it comes. Hinata Kumikawa responded as he changed into a white outfit and tied the Konoha headband to his forehead. Although the original owner of this body was considered a waste by the Hyuga clan, that was only because he was over 13 years old, but had never been able to awaken the Byakugan. Of course, it was also because of the original owner's cowardly and fearful nature that he was so frightened that he cried on the spot when he first saw the battlefield, which other members of the clan thought was a disgrace to the family. Even so, he was still better than most ninjas from commoner backgrounds, and graduated as a genin alongside Might Guy, who was considered a loser. However, Might Guy is now a chunin, while he is still a genin. Pushing open the door, Matt Kai hanging from the horizontal bar came into view. This guy really can't sit still for a second. Bang! Seeing Hinata Yunchuan come out after changing his clothes, Might Guy stretched his muscles and landed, unfastening the weights on his legs with a loud thud. Oh, so this is the vibrant spirit of Konoha, a testament to youthful energy. He scrutinized Hyuga Kumikawa's body, his eyes burning with fierce fighting spirit. I never imagined that in just a few months since I left the village for a mission, you'd ignite such passion. This level of weight is equivalent to the weight of his entire body during his usual training. You flatter me, senior. I should thank you for being willing to teach me the 8 gates formation. Faced with the praise from this crazy rare beast, Hinata Kumikawa simply smiled and said politely, the 8 gates formation is indeed powerful, but it is based on the strength of the user's own body. For example, Kakashi can open the first gate of the 8 gates formation, but he is still not as strong as Might Guy in his normal state when the 8 gates formation is not open. Might Guy had been training his body with his father since he was a child, and that little weight was just a daily burden for him. I never expected that you, as a member of the Hyuga clan, would seek me out to learn the 8 gates and the steel fist. This unconventional resolve, this courage to challenge the limits. Might Guy suddenly raised 2 thumbs up, his eyes filled with tears. His emotions came and went quickly. He turned and looked into the depths of the clan's territory, where he could still vaguely see the once solemn Hyuga clan territory, with its vibrant colors still remaining. What are they doing here? Mackay asked, somewhat curiously. Hinata Hyuga, the eldest daughter of the main family, is about to turn 3 years old, Hinata Kumikawa said with a smile. Ha! Matt Kai was taken aback. Does she always make such a big fuss about her birthday? Of course not. Hinata Kumakawa shook his head, a deep meaning in his eyes. A third birthday has a different meaning for the children of the main family. When each child of the main family turns 3, a group of children from the branch families are branded with the caged bird curse mark. The most outstanding children among those who split up the family would have the opportunity to become personal guards for the children of the main family. Hinata Hyuga, as the eldest daughter of the main branch of the Hyuga clan, is the only candidate to succeed as the clan leader, so her third birthday is naturally of great importance to the Hyuga clan. Other ninja clans from Konoha and some nobles from the Land of Fire would come to the Hyuga clan to offer their congratulations. Unfortunately, this also means that things are destined to be turbulent for the foreseeable future. Hinata Unkawa thought to himself with a sneer. Since Hinata Hyuga is already 3 years old, it means that the hidden cloud village will soon come to Konoha to sign a ceasefire agreement, and at the same time plan to kidnap Hinata Hyuga. This period will also be a good opportunity for Hinata Kumakawa to make plans. As they pondered, the two walked out of the house side by side, chatting and laughing, the atmosphere remaining pleasant throughout, until they reached the gates of the near Sunset clan territory. Stop! A cold voice came from the side, causing the two to stop in their tracks. Hinata Kumakawa squinted, turned his head to look in the direction of the sound, and saw a disgusted face. Hyuga Kumakawa. The Hyuga clansman on duty stood by the gate and coldly questioned, "Today is Lady Aoi's extra training day. As her attendant, why aren't you by her side? Where are you going?" End of this chapter. Chapter 8, Reincarnation I. Chapter 8, Reincarnation I. Almost every member of the Hyuga clan's branch family has a main family member to serve, called a servant, but actually a maid. Not every member of the main family is as gentle as Hinata Hyuga. If you're unlucky enough to be assigned to serve a member of the main family with a bad personality, you'll have to serve as a training punching bag, in addition to being a servant. Coincidentally, the main family member that Hyuga Kumakawa serves is such a guy who doesn't value the lives of the branch family. The guy in front of me is just a good dog. Hyuga Kumakawa's smile faded slightly. He ignored the Hyuga clansman's deliberate provocation and continued walking outside. The other party clearly hadn't expected that Hyuga Kumakawa, who had always passively accepted the rumors, would ignore him. His face darkened instantly, and he called out his name in a deep voice. "Hyuga Kumakawa, I'm asking you a question." Hinata Kumakawa continued walking, ignoring him, and Mike Guy simply shrugged and followed. "Useless trash. I told you to stop right there." An angry voice came from behind, followed by the whistling sound of wind breaking through the air. That guy actually grabbed Hinata Kumakawa's shoulder, and the force he used showed absolutely no kinship whatsoever. Matt Kai stopped in his tracks, his brow furrowed, and he was about to intervene. But the moment that hand landed on his shoulder, Hyuga Kumakawa's body trembled violently like a pine tree shaking in the snow. A penetrating force instantly traveled through his entire body to his shoulder, causing the Hyuga clansman to feel a numbness in his hand. The next moment, before the astonished Hyuga clansman could react, without turning his head, Hinata Kumakawa bent one arm, stepped forward with his left foot, and moved his body in a circle. The white hem of his clothes moved and swirled gently, revealing his well-defined abdominal muscles as he pushed his palm out. If someone from a past life saw this action, they would definitely blurt out 2 words. In the eyes of the Hyuga clan, his right hand was first knocked away, and Hyuga Kumakawa in front of him disappeared at a speed of almost instantaneous movement, lowering his body and placing his palm on his abdomen. Then an unimaginable force, far surpassing his own, surged up from that palm and engulfed him like a tidal wave. Bang! The terrifying force erupted instantly within half a centimeter, enough to shake rocks, striking the Hyuga clansman's body and causing him to bend over as if struck by a battering ram. Just as a mouthful of blood was about to spit out from the Hyuga clansman's mouth. It would be bad if there was blood. A nonchalant voice reached my ears. Hinata Kumakawa, with his right palm facing upward and elbow pointing downward, expressionlessly patted Hinata's chin. A crisp snap sound rang out, and the mouthful of foul blood that had risen to his throat was swallowed back down. Cough, cough, cough. The Hyuga clansman's face contorted in pain as he clutched his throat and abdomen, collapsing weakly to his knees before Hyuga Kumakawa. How dare you? His white eyes bulged slightly, with veins standing out around them. He stared intently at Hinata Kumakawa. However, upon meeting those calm eyes, the rest of his sentence inexplicably caught in his throat, and a chill suddenly rose in his heart. It was a chill that came from nowhere, like a venomous snake crawling across my body, pressing down on me little by little with its icy temperature. He's actually afraid. How could I be afraid of this good-for-nothing? This slap is for you. Hyuga Kumakawa looked down at him, a smile returning to his face. Hyuga Aoi's extra training is in the afternoon, so don't try to bully me next time. As he spoke, he gently patted his shoulder, ignoring his slightly trembling body, and walked out of the clan's territory with Matt Kai beside him. I never imagined you could go this far. Throughout the journey, Mike Guy remained relaxed, expressing only curiosity about Hinata Kumakawa's actions. He had naturally heard of Hinata Kumakawa's past deeds, but Hinata Kumakawa was a friend he acknowledged, and he felt that Kumakawa was not the good-for-nothing he was rumored to be. Putting everything else aside, just based on that martial art he had never seen before, which seemed to combine steel fist and soft fist techniques, he thought it was far superior to those self-imposed limitations of the Hyuga clan. He just didn't understand why Yun Chuan kept ignoring the rumors. I'm sorry to have made you laugh, senior. After all, they are my kinsmen, and I didn't want to go too far, Hinata Kumakawa said apologetically. Matt Kai shook his head and grinned. You did the right thing. Youth should not be tainted. Hinata Kumakawa smiled and said helplessly, I am indeed a little annoyed by how things have turned out. Ding, your lie has been judged as blank fabrication. Matt Kai experienced a slight emotional fluctuation, reaching the level of complete belief, and gained 200 truth points. This is, of course, a lie. Why didn't you pay attention to it before? On the one hand, it's because the plan against Orochimaru hasn't succeeded yet, and a harmless, useless image is more useful to him. On the other hand, when the dog at the village entrance barks, the other dogs bark too, but they don't know why they're barking. If you stop and throw stones to drive away every barking stray dog, you won't have anything else to do. Hinata Kumakawa sneered inwardly. He felt absolutely no emotional response to that nameless extra. His actions were partly to test new tactics he had come up with, and partly to lay the groundwork for his next plan. Only rats hide in the gutter. No one will believe the words of a rat. Just like when Danzo Shimura says something, the villagers will only say, who is this old codger? But when Hiruzen Sarutobi says something casually, no matter how bizarre it is, they will subconsciously doubt that they have failed to understand it. A lie only becomes truth when it comes from the mouth of someone who has power and authority. The bloodline's transformation of Hyuga Kumakawa was from the inside out, from the ethereal perception and talent to the physical strength. Without external interference, the transformation and purification of the body by bloodline should be a long and slow process, gradually becoming stronger over time. Hinata Kumakawa can't wait too long. He needs more realization points. So he needs to get closer to other high-quality targets and appropriately demonstrate his abilities to increase his own value. The resistance just now was only the first step. If nothing unexpected happens, more people will soon learn that he was subjected to human experimentation and modification by Orochimaru. Hiruzen Sarutobi has likely already brought Yamato, now codenamed Ko, under his command. As one of Orochimaru's only two surviving experimental subjects, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Danzo Shimura will undoubtedly try to test him. Thinking of this, Hyuga Kumakawa recalled his eyes again, his gaze flickering as he silently recited in his mind, a materialized item, the pure Byakugan that can be fused to awaken the Tenseigan. Will the 10,000 realization points spent materialize? It's just enough to manifest perfectly. Upon hearing this, Hyuga Kumakawa hesitated for a moment, and just to be on the safe side, he tentatively recited in his mind. The way to awaken the Tenseigan by fusing a materialized item, the pure Byakugan, with the pure Otsutsuki bloodline. Insufficient points. Hinata Kumakawa's face immediately darkened. As expected, something is still missing. Thankfully, I didn't fall for that damn system's tricks. If he impulsively spends all his savings and ends up with nothing but a pair of useless, disdainful looks, he'll have nowhere to turn for help. In that case, the second method is the safest and most reliable option. Hinata Kumakawa frowned. The Byakugan of the Hyuga clan should be of higher purity than that of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. The only problem is that their numbers are far fewer than those of the Otsutsuki clan, who have peacefully occupied the moon for thousands of years. It's also unknown whether the entire clan could fuse their eyes to create the Tenseigan. Cough, cough. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, Hyuga Kumakawa couldn't help but cough and quickly muttered, forgive me," to himself. Gouging out all his eyes is just too evil. He's not that beast, Itachi Uchiha. We only need to dig up the Hyuga clan members who have awakened their Sharingan. There's no point in digging up the ordinary people who haven't. Of course, this is something he can't do. He has better candidates. Now all that's left is for those old fogies to show their ugly faces. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Konoha can't afford to gamble anymore. Chapter 9. Konoha can't afford to gamble anymore. Inside the Hokage building, in an office, Hiruzen Sarutobi leaned back in his chair, eyes lowered in silence, puffing out smoke from his pipe. The air was as stuffy as a clay pot under high pressure, making one want to smash the walls or open the lid to escape. Ahem. The unbearable silence was broken only when Zyrochen, who was turning over in her new room, coughed. Hiruzen, about this matter. Mitakado Hamura breathed a sigh of relief, glanced at Danzo, who was stubbornly refusing to back down, and then looked at Hiruzen Sarutobi in front of him, advising. This time, Danzo did indeed go a bit too far. Secretly conducting wood-release experiments, hoarding research results, and wood-release ninjas. Isn't that going too far enough? Before Mitakado Hamura could continue to defend Danzo, Hiruzen Sarutobi interrupted expressionlessly. That's wood-release. Don't tell me you don't understand what that means. Upon hearing this, Mitakado Hamura's old face flushed slightly, and he looked helplessly at Shimura Danzo. Yes, that's a wood-release ninja. Who would have thought that Danzo had become so audacious as to secretly harbor wood-release ninjas? If it weren't for the investigation into Orochimaru's defection, they wouldn't know that wood-release had reappeared. Danzo's current control over Root has even made Mitakado Hamura somewhat uneasy. Root is the root of Konoha, the root of the Anbu, and my root. But now they dare to conceal such important information from me, the Hokage. Does that mean? Hiruzen Sarutobi paused, narrowed his eyes at Danzo, and questioned, has it become an independent organization for certain people to profit from? Upon hearing this, Danzo, who had been expressionless, said in a deep voice, Everything I have done is for Konoha. Hearing his old buddy's resounding response, Hiruzen Sarutobi silently exhaled a puff of smoke, his face shrouded in a hazy white mist, appearing unpredictable from Danzo's perspective. Hiruzen. Koharu, who had been silent all along, couldn't help but speak up. Enough! Hearing that they were going to plead for Danzo again, Hiruzen Sarutobi waved his hand impatiently, signaling them to stop talking. After Tobarama died, due to a plot by the hidden Cloud Village, he was appointed Hokage in a time of crisis. But the Hokage position was different from his youthful fantasies. Upon taking office, he faced the pressure of war and the ninja clan, which shattered his illusions about the Hokage position. Both the Hyuga and Uchiha clans initially treated him as someone who obeyed orders but not commands. Fortunately, as Hokage, he had a sense of righteousness when vying for power, and in addition to the Sarutobi clan, he also had the support of the Ino Shikacho trio. Therefore, he adopted a strategy of attacking one group and then recruiting another. With the assistance of Danzo and others, he used some special methods to put the two powerful ninja clans, Uchiha and Hyuga, into conflict. Finally, he secured his position as Hokage, grasped the power that belonged to the Hokage, and placed his confidence in important departments. The route, during Tobarama Senju's time, was actually just the training department of the Dark Guard. It wasn't until he gave Danzo control of Root that it gradually evolved into an intelligence organization in order to handle some dirty, clandestine matters that couldn't be dealt with under the guise of the Ambu, such as monitoring the ninja clans. Danzo's Root was essentially equivalent to a secret squad. According to the Secret Service's structure, Danzo, as the squad leader, could only lead 4 squads, totaling 17 people. However, with Hiruzen Sarutobi's intentional or unintentional indulgence, Root continued to expand and grow stronger. Under Danzo's influence, its style of doing things became increasingly sinister until now. If Root is allowed to continue developing in this way, it will become too powerful to control and will completely degenerate into Danzo's personal armed organization. Therefore, it is necessary to impose restrictions. Let's not talk about the wood-release ninja, A, anymore. I've already put him in the Anbu. Now there's something else. Ignoring Danzo's resentful expression, Hiruzen Sarutobi looked intently at the 3 people in front of him and asked, "Information has come from the border that Kumagakure seems to be mobilizing its forces and may be planning some kind of underhanded action. What are your thoughts on this?"